Pakistan 8303 is approaching Jinnah International Airport for a second attempt to land. The plane is severely damaged and it has lost both its engines. The undercarriage of the plane is visibly damaged. Oil is spilling out and low oil pressure warnings are blaring in the cockpit. The landing gear is not down. The first officer's panels aren't working, and they are barely 2,000 feet off the ground. They still have to left turns to make before they can reach the safety of the runway.
Sir, we have lost engines.
But their plane is losing altitude and dropping to the ground by the second, and as the runway comes closer.
Stall.
How did this plane end up in such a disastrous situation? And the question now is, will the 99 souls on board this plane make it home safe? This is the story that will change Pakistani aviation forever. This is the story of Pakistan Airlines 8303. It's May 2020, and the world is in the grip of the COVID-19 pandemic, and Pakistan is under strict lockdowns. At Lahore International Airport, Flight 8303 is preparing for departure. This is a daily passenger service between Lahore and Karachi, but due to the pandemic, this is one of just a handful of flights in the sky today. Captain Sajjad Gul and First Officer Usman Azam are in the cockpit. With them are 6 cabin crew and 89 passengers. Lahore ATC clears the plane for departure. The plane pushes back and lifts off from Lahore International Airport 10 minutes later. The plane being used today is a 16-year-old Airbus A320. It was manufactured and delivered to PIA in 2004. Due to the pandemic, the plane was grounded for 2 months and it just started flying again a week earlier. Regular maintenance checks were still being carried out and the plane was in a good condition. This plane was installed with 2 brand new CFM56 turbofan engines. A year prior to this flight, the engines were in pristine condition. Today, the first officer is the pilot flying and the captain is pilot monitoring. These 2 people are going to play a major factor in the events today. So, let's take a closer look at them. The captain is 58-year-old Sajjad Gul. He joined PIA in 1996 and was promoted to captain in 2015, but he has had a controversial career. When he first applied to join PIA in 1996, he failed his mandatory psychiatric evaluation, which all pilots need to undergo. He was described as being bossy, dominant, overbearing, and having poor stress tolerance. Normally, a report like this would disqualify the pilot from joining the airline, but Gul was adamant and he was determined to join PIA. He went and sought second opinions from 5 other psychiatrists, 3 from the UK and 2 from Pakistan, and they all declared him fit to be a cadet pilot, and he was allowed to begin training with the airline. Sitting to the captain's right is First Officer Usman Azam. He was 33 years old and with significantly less experience compared to the captain. Azam had joined the airline in 2010 and he had around 2,300 hours of flying experience, most of them on the A320. The first officer exhibited deficiencies during his career as well, and because of that, the airline withheld his promotion to first officer in 2016, but after undergoing correctional training, he was promoted. What this tells us is that this plane is being flown by to people with questionable training histories and specifically with a captain who has been considered an underperformer. There's also a steep experience and age gap between the 2, resulting in a significant power gradient. This too will become a factor in this flight. It's the month of Ramadan, and the pilots, both Muslims, are fasting. They haven't eaten or drunk anything since sunrise 8 hours ago. Although international regulations prohibit fasting and flying because reduced sugar levels can affect your decision-making skills. Since this was a domestic flight within Pakistan, international rules weren't enforced, and the pilots were free to fly. The plane continued its climb, and is it now? Cruising at an altitude of 34,000 feet. The skies are clear. Weather is calm. It's a perfect day for flying. They are about 150 nautical miles from the airport. The ATC clears them to approach the airport via this route. This route is called Nawabshah 2A. To follow this route, they need to fly at a heading of 205 degrees from the city of Nawabshah, and then take a right at around this point near the city Hyderabad. Their goal is to hit this waypoint called Makli at an altitude of 8,000 feet. For nautical miles after Makli is another point called Sabin. They'll need to do a holding pattern to reduce altitude from 8,000 feet to 3,000 feet. They don't know it yet, but their first problem has just started. The crew skipped their mandatory approach briefing. The foe enabled the Nawabshah to approach on the flight computer. Since the crew are busy talking about things unrelated to the flight, the captain doesn't cross-verify this change. Now, you might think that this is a major deviation to the standard operating procedure, and yes it is, but hold on. We are just getting started. At around 15 p.m., the first officer calls up the ATC to request permission to descend. ATC, Pakistan 8303 descent FL 100. Pilot discretion, proceed directly. Focus on the words proceed directly. Because there's not many flights in the air, the ATC decides to give them a shortcut. Although they were originally cleared for this route, the ATC now permits them to skip Hyderabad and fly directly to Makli. This new route is called Nawabshah 1C. They have also been cleared to descend to FL 100. The first officer changes the altitude assignment in the autopilot, but once again, there's no cross-check of this change done by the captain. This cross-check exists so that if one pilot makes a mistake, the other pilot can identify it and correct it before it becomes a significant problem. But this crew just didn't care to do it. And this behavior is going to take a dark turn. The pilot set up the autopilot to follow a managed descent. In this mode, the autopilot will calculate a path taking into consideration the total number of track miles left to fly, the speed at which the pilot wants to fly, and any altitude restrictions that are present for any waypoints along the route. Usually in this mode, if everything is set up correctly, the plane should descend at around 1,000 feet per minute. This plane, though, is only descending at 1,000 feet per minute. A slower descent usually happens